Hey, come on, it's not you, baby. It's me. Skills can be learned and time can be made, but without enthusiasm, without motivation, whatever you're thinking of doing probably isn't going to get done. And that's how cars end up in garages for months, years. I know people with cars for decades, and it's just that little bit of motivation hasn't kicked in. I say this because in the last while since I've seen you, my own motivation has been tested right to the limit. And it wasn't just about trying to move out of the unit, which is ongoing and testing. Every job I tried to do on one of the cars, it just fought me every step of the way. Something cropped up, something broke down. And as is the only way, I tried my very best to change direction, pick up something else, just keep moving. But I gotta say, by the time it came to the deadline where I just had to start editing and down tools, I was relieved because I was coming to the end of my tether. Anyway, we're gonna meet a guy later on who is hugely motivated as far as I'm concerned. Before we do though, and before I tell you what the state of play is and where we're going and where we're gonna go, let's get into the work that I did manage to get done and have a look. In a unit far, far away, there was a chassis that was way too silver, so I painted it. And this is just off the shelf black metal paint, and if I'm honest, it doesn't go on so great. I did key up the silver paint first, but it was thin. If I didn't get the brush strokes just right, the silver was showing through. So I did give this a second coat, not all over, just in the places that needed it. Because really this is just an overcoat to give us the colour we want rather than more protection. Now for the first time looking at this chassis, it really feels like it's solid. It feels like it has some life left in it. And I'm only sorry we didn't get to paint the whole thing. But from the very beginning, this car just wasn't in the plan. Anyway, I moved on to the axle and it got the same treatment. And again, it's looking nice. This looks sharp. The diff was the last thing to get some paint, and as I looked at the car I realised I can't really offer up this axle to these dirty unfinished trailing arms. So I went to get them off, and I started on the offside, which is something I usually don't do because the offside is always the easier side and I like to tackle the difficult thing first. Anyway, it wasn't so easy to get the offside one out, which didn't bode well for the near side, and sod's law, I couldn't budge it. And what you're not seeing here is the huge breaker bar I was using, the second guy trying to hold the car down because I was lifting it off the axle stands. This was the first defeat of this round of work. So I moved on to the axle and I started to prepare the flange on it to have a new gasket put on and the diff replaced. Now I'm just going around this with a kind of a stiff scraper, and when I get most of the gasket and the old sealant off, I'm hitting it with a wire brush. Wire wool would be really good for this, but I didn't want to use that because it disintegrates and I don't want all those little bits of metal inside this housing, even though I'm going to clean it and hoover it out before the diff goes back on. Yeah, the wire brush will shed a bristle or two, but they are very easily spotted. So with that done, over to the diff itself, and it got the same treatment. I was very careful here to watch what was happening because any little bit of metal getting into this would seriously compromise the bearings in it. So with a good clean up and a hoover out, we are ready to go with this. I've stripped a diff before, but I've never replaced the bearings because I don't have a press suitable to do it. But when we get into the yellow Range Rover, we will be tackling this, so don't worry. Anyway, it went back on, no problem. And having cleaned up the nuts for this, I cinched them all back up and this is good to go. Now there was one other thing that had to be tackled before this axle could go back on, and you may have noticed it. On the A-frame ball joint there is a little rubber boot, a little rubber gaiter, and it was perished. So I ordered a new one. Now I pulled the old one off and was careful to keep the springs to reuse them with the new boot. But After a little bit of fiddling, I realised the boot that I'd gotten was the wrong one. Defeat number 2. But this was a tough one to swallow because it meant the axle can't go back on. Or if it does, we've got to do some more messing later on to replace this boot with the proper one when we get it. So again, I left that and I turned my attention to other things. And this is the cradle for the fuel tank. It's the second one I've ever had to clean up, and the other one was just the same. They trap a lot of water and dirt, so they rust badly. And although I uncovered some holes in this, it's still got some life in it and we'll patch it up. But halfway through, our angle grinder gave up. And this was the hardest thing to get by yet, and not for an obvious reason. This angle grinder is over 30 years old. I have a pair of them. My parents, when I was a kid, had a power tool shop, and these are relics from back then. And they have lasted this long. These were built at a time when you could take your power tool back to the shop and have it repaired. My folks had 2 technicians in the back of the shop all day, every day, repairing these machines. So this is how I know a little bit about them. And what I wanted to do when this happened, when I got over it, was do a strip down on this, just to kind of show you inside one of these. And maybe, far-fetched as it might sound, we could fix it, because it still wants to run this thing. The motor isn't burnt out, something else is going on. But there wasn't any time for that. We will get to it. We'll at least have a look, because I'd like to save this machine if I could. And I'd like to also say that this machine has outlasted a new one that was bought during the production of soup and has died since. It was the same brand too. That grinder episode may well have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but luckily I'd run up to a deadline whereby I had to go and concentrate on other things that needed to be organised. And this Range Rover you're seeing is right at the heart of what came next. This belongs to a patron and friend, Andy, and it has a Mazda SL35 turbo diesel conversion, which is a well-known conversion, and Andy asked me would I wire it for him. But I said no, because I really don't like the responsibility of working on other people's cars. And then I realised the long wheelbase Mercedes Sprinter that Andy had for sale would really get me out of a hole, because I couldn't find anywhere to move the series into. So I got back to Andy and I said, you know what, let's do it. And over 2 days, with Andy helping out, we rewired this thing. And it's a solid job. But the really cool upshot here is that it has both given Andy a great knowledge of the wiring of his car, but also gotten him past one of those hurdles that he had run up against, where his motivation had gotten low and he hadn't really done anything on the car in a while. Well, now his engine's running and Andy is gung-ho working on the car to get it finished, which is just fantastic. And as for the Sprinter, I was able to get it from him at a price basically I could afford. And the first thing I did before we took it down the road was to spray the roof. And why did I bother, as Andy said?
So if a cop stops us and starts sticking his big snout in the car, the subterfuge won't last. But at a glance, the car will appear to be normal.
That's just an excuse to get that little clip in. I had somebody with a trade policy drive this back for me, so it was all legal and above board, I think. Anyway, I was able now to start clearing out the unit. And by the way, this van is a great machine. It had been wrapped a few times, which is what had happened to the roof. Somehow the paint over the cab had come away with one of the wrap jobs. But overall, there's very little rust on this thing, only a bit of surface rust here and there. And for a van of this age, that is incredible. On top of that, it is very low mileage. There are a few little niggles that need to be fettled, but otherwise this thing is a great buy as far as I'm concerned. And it is now full of basically everything that was in the unit, save for the 2 cars and some of the Vogue's panels. And the unit itself is back to a stage that I had hoped to keep it at, which is clean and clear all the way around the cars, a work environment that I would really like to work in. But there will be more chances to foster that again. Regardless of the right parts, the next time I get back to the unit, this axle is going back on the Range Rover and the whole lot's coming out. There it is. It's a great machine. It does need TLC, but that's academic, because what's happening is that is now just a shed on wheels. We are moving here. I'm going to work from home. I'm going to save money and save time, and hopefully if I can swing it, I'm going to build a dream workshop in the series. That's the big idea, and I can't elaborate on that any further because it really is just an idea. I don't have plans. I only have a kind of a concept in my head, and I will bring it to you as soon as I can, you know, articulate it visually. Let's put it that way. Okay, before we talk to a man about a dog, here are some cars, actually all from patrons this time. The first is from Michael Rayner, who has a TVR S3C. Now that is a handsome thing. It uses the Rover V8, a 5-litre version of the Rover V8. But what I thought was really interesting from talking to Michael is that for the Italian market, which is beset by high taxes, as we are here, road tax, and as we are in Greece as well, they made a 2-litre version of this engine, a 2-litre version of the Rover V8, which is something I'd never heard of. They stroked it down to whatever, 1995, something like that, and then they strapped a supercharger to it. That's an engine I'd love to hear. It must be crazy. Anyway, Michael has been under his TVR attacking stone chips. So fair play, Michael, keep it up, and thanks for the info and the photographs. The next thing is a Dacia 1300. This is from 1980 and it belongs to Probosnei Laurent. I would never have known that Dacia went back A, that far, but B, had the plans for the Renault 12 as I would have known it in Ireland. And I never would have looked twice at a Renault 12, but there's something, it's come full circle, this car, this Dacia. It looks in such good nick, Probosnei, but it's kind of cool. It's really kind of come round to a place where it's a very cool thing. So thanks a million for the photographs, mate, and I hope you get some great use out of it in the summer. The person though who will get the Valet Pro kit this time is someone called Paris Wilcox, who he just put up these 2 photographs on the community page in Patreon, and he just said, I've turned down the hubs on my Fiero so that it'll accept more modern vented discs. But he said it was something that he'd been putting off for a long time because he'd never worked on something to that tolerance, and he stuck his neck out finally, which it's what we're all about here, just sticking the neck out. The motivation is the thing, you see. All right, I hope you get a lot of use out of your car and of this kit, Paris, over the summer, and well wear, pal. Now, the guy we're going to meet, his name is Andy, but he is affectionately known by probably every Lotus guy on the planet as Bibbs, and he is the man who started the Lotus forums. Here he is. Well, on the very end of Tina's trip to the UK, I managed to catch up with an old friend, have a cup of tea and see some of the sights of London. And while Tina took the high road over Tower Bridge, I took the low boat under it, and we crossed the Thames to meet 2 gents, a man called Simon and of course Bibbs from the Lotus forums. And Simon had very kindly offered us his very, very beautiful filming location to have our interview in. And before we get into it, I thought I'd show you some shots of this place. There will be a link to Simon's website in the description, but what was really cool was that if you've ever seen a program, it's a crime drama called Silent Witness, which I'm actually very fond of. An episode of it was actually shot here. And as one of the detectives went through the crime scene as it was, he picks up a book. And what's the book? Well, it's Simon's copy of The Official Story of the Esprit by Jeremy Walton. Now, this is a book I've never read, but it changes hands for quite a bit of money. It's quite a valuable book. I thought that was very cool. Anyway, that's by the by. We had a great old chat in a lovely environment thanks to Simon. And here's what Bibbs had to say.
Real name's Andy, and everyone calls me Bibbs because of a bad purchase many years ago.
What was the purchase?
A number plate, which is meant to say Lotus, but it just says Bibtus. So everyone just called me Bibtus, or Bibbs for short. Yeah, and now my daily driver car is B185 TLF, so it says Bibbs TLF. So I have a number plate from a number plate which was never a good number plate in the first place. Yeah, I shouldn't buy number plates. I run the Lotus forums, been running it for 13 years and 2 months now. Started off as a hobby for Esprit owners, and then we expanded out a little bit into 211 owners, then Avora owners, and then merged it all together into the Lotus forums. That takes up most of my time nowadays. Don't really get any breaks from that. It's a 24-hour business, 7 days a week being the internet. I say we, so it doesn't sound like I do everything. To be fair, the moderators do some work, so I have a team of 8 moderators that help out around the world. 7 in the UK, 1 in Australia. Oh no, 1 in America as well, Travis. He's out in Denver. So we have 24-hour coverage of the site. So they're always keeping an eye on things in the right place and spelling's right and all the little bits. Oh, 100%. We probably only started taking paid members and advertisers maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But before that it was just a hobby. But it gets to the point where you have to pay a lot of money for servers. It takes a lot of time to go to all the events, so some revenue coming in makes it a lot easier to be able to run the site. But someone spoke to me many years ago and said that we shouldn't make it worse for people that don't pay, we should make it better for people that do. So the people that don't pay don't really miss out on anything, but the people that do pay, and it's not very much, it's £2 a month in the UK, they get little extras, they get access to the discounts, they get parts manual downloads, using the forums a little bit easier for them, get bigger allowances, less flood control and that sort of thing. Little differences, but it makes a difference to them and it makes a difference to us. They get discounts on our shop as well. Lotus merchandise is cheap for them. 10% off. Deal.
It really strikes me that you're a very patient guy, because you just seem to be, you give everybody your time, and that can't be easy. How many people are on the Lotus forums?
A year users just shy of 1 million. Who actually post maybe 4,000 or 5,000 a year from all over the world. We're in every country apart from Chad. I'm not even sure where Chad is, but we will break Chad at some point. But every country. So yeah, it is, the way I see it, it's like a pub and everyone's chatting about cars, but you've got people from Australia, America, Russia, France, Holland, Belgium, England, wherever that happens to be from, different cultures all coming together, the one common thing, and it's keeping their discussions nice and happy and friendly while they're all helping each other, because everyone's on there, they've either got a problem or they're a helpful person, but the people with the problems eventually learn and become helpful people. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in so much that when you come on there at first, I knew nothing about Esprits at first. I bought this big black car that was ace and I loved it, but if anything went wrong with it, I didn't have a clue even where to start. But now, I wouldn't say I'll be changing the clutch myself, but I've spent 13 years reading about problems with Esprit, so I know how to help people that have got problems with the cars. And obviously I've learned that from the Esprit. Now I know the Evora pretty well, Elise and Exige to a degree, having owned the Elise quite well. And you hear problems, and for some people it's new. Esprit headlamp pods, it's one of the first ones we had. Oh, they're full of water. Every 5 minutes someone, oh, they're full of water. So now everyone knows how to do it. You just undo the bolts, lift them up and empty out the drain holes. But that information is now there, so if you Google my Esprit headlamp pods are full of water, it's there, it's been there for 10, 12, 13 years. So all the questions are answered. I was involved with a Welsh band back in the day, the Goldie Looking Chain, and I set up the GLC forum, and I thought I can do this. So I set up Lotus Esprit forum and just did it really, and you build it, they come, all of a sudden it was very busy. So yeah, before we merged, I think we had about 6,500 people, just Esprit owners on there. 211 owners, probably 500 or 600, but the Evora site was getting busy as well. We had 1,000 people on there before the Evora was even launched. Then it made sense to kind of do everything, really, and not repeat everything 3 times, which was getting a bit of a chore. So yeah, merged it all together, do the small platform now, not as good as other sites, but we still do some Elise and Exige. But really the Evora and the new V6 Exige have really captured that very well, while retaining the Esprit owners. We have 250,000 technical posts on the Esprit. There's a lot there, you can take one apart and put it back together. You should try it. Whatever problem you come up against, someone's had it before. It's not unique, these cars have been around a long time. So there will be a solution, and probably a better one than you find in a manual, of people actually doing it on an old car, which takes that little bit of extra work.
Have you yourself moved on from the Esprit? Is it really the Evora for you now?
I've had 6 Evoras, which were lent to me by the factory, and I enjoyed those every time. After my Esprit, I went to the Elise, tried that for a couple of years, had a Series 1 standard car, then a 111S, and maybe I'm getting old, but the Evora appeals. And I've had this one for 2 months now, and I've been to Germany and back, done a track day in it already, done 2,500 miles so far, and it's been a hoot. And I enjoyed them when I had them before, so I'm lucky enough to have one now. But I miss Esprits. I really like an Esprit again. It's got that supercar presence. The Evora is a great car, but the Esprit is a showstopper. I started off with a X180 NA. First saw that car when I was 15 years old. then I kept saying to the guy that owned it for 10 years, one day I'll own that car. It's the only Esprit I'd ever seen. Didn't see another one on the road anywhere. He moved to Australia and said he's going to take the car, and their import laws at the time meant he couldn't take it. So he offered it to me and I bought it, and had that for 7 years. And then upgraded to a turbo SE with the extra 90 horsepower. No, it's more than that. 172 to 286, 114 horsepower, and the charge cooler and the fuel injection, and had that for 5 years. Enjoyed it a lot. Getting in the Evora is fun. It's a great GT car. It's also very good on track. It's a hoot on the B roads. Getting in the Esprit's an event. And I had a decan, a straight through exhaust, so it's 115 decibels, so it was a loud event as well. But you knew you're getting in a supercar, and it felt like it every time.
Right, I gotta ask, how were you involved with Goldie Look and Chain?
I first heard a song called Roller Disco a long time ago, and it reminded me of when I was a nipper, and used to go to the roller disco, then go home in time for the A-Team&T, as the lyrics. And that was me. I used to play roller hockey in the mornings, go to the roller disco in the afternoon, try not to fall over in front of the girls, then get home in time for the A-Team&T. And I just thought it was funny. And I'd seen this Esprit forum, and I thought I'll set them up a forum, see if they like it. And I'd only listened to the band, hadn't been that involved, and they liked it, they got behind it. And I think I've been on stage with them now 25 times, got a gold disc at home for the Greatest Hits album, been to over 100 gigs. So yeah, I've sworn in time to music to thousands of people. I've sung Your Mother's Got a Penis to many. It's a love song.
They got you on stage and they put you on a mic?
Yeah. I can't sing. I was kicked out of my primary school choir. But when you're swearing in time to music, the tone, the Goldie Look and Chain ain't going to win any Ivor Novellos or whatever it is for singing. Maybe that's filming actually. They ain't going to win an award for it, but it's just fun. And it was a hoot. We had a laugh. We did the Gumball Rally in London. First person stopped by the police. Got in the sun the next day. We were in a Bedford Rascal 18 van, and there was an F40 in front of me and a Lamborghini 4x4, the LP, I can't remember what they're called now, but one of the big off-road Lamborghinis. We're in a 30-pound Bedford Rascal painted with a Hammerite to look like an 18 van, and I had the band in the back, and Your Mother's Got a Penis on full volume. We drove past 500 cops, and one of them said, "Pull over," and he said, "Where are the seats and seatbelts?" I'm like, "It's a Bedford Rascal, mate. The steering wheel comes out over speed bumps, there are no seats in the back." So yeah, ended up getting points and a fine for that. Yeah, but I lost that Bedford Rascal. When I moved out of London, a friend said I could leave it by his lock-up garage in Streatham. So I thought that's very kind of him, so we parked it up there, I gave him the keys. Then I remembered I owned it a couple of years later, went back to get the keys, and it moved, and I couldn't remember where the garage was. So I drove around Streatham looking for it, calling its name, but no, it's gone. So I had to ring the DVLA and say, "I've lost this van." And they're like, "When's the last time you saw it?" I'm like, "Well, 8 years ago." So I think they've struck me off the register for it now, but yeah, missed that van. It did have a really nice sound system we put in for the Gumball Rally. But if you turn the stereo up too loud, it would stall the engine, because I didn't realise that 2 of the HT leads weren't connected, so it's only ever on 2 cylinders. When I actually connected them, it was really quick. It's when, do you remember the maggot was in Celebrity Big Brother? It came second, Chantal won it, the fake. He'd just come out of that, and obviously he was sat in the front with me, so all the fans were screaming for me, but they saw him there as well. Someone did actually ask me to sign a CD. I'm like, "I'm not famous, you don't want me to do that." Then I'll sign it anyway. That might have been my mum as well. What I was saying about the pub thing is that when you type something on the internet, it's very hard to put across what you think, and it's very easy for people to take things the wrong way. So if the conversations are not steered, but if someone who's seen these sort of things before know how to explain it to the person who could be aggrieved about it, then everyone just gets on. Because it's very easy to have arguments on the internet, and people get very hit up and they throw their keyboard out the window. But we've got 17,000 subscribed members, and we've only had to ban 10 people in 13 years. A lot of websites will ban them people a day, I think, but we generally have a really nice atmosphere on there. They're generally nice people are on there to help. But sometimes, just different cultures, the way people say things, the Americans might be a little bit more abrupt with how they see things, they might read things differently. But yeah, we proactively monitor that rather than reactively, so we deal with it when it happens rather than letting it get to people being upset with each other.
You must be a natural diplomat. I think that must be a prerequisite for what you're doing.
Yeah. It's so many people from different places is the hard bit, and different cultures, and patience is a key as well. We had a chat the other day, he was talking about the new Exige Cup 430, but he was talking about it in the wrong thread, so his topics were moved to the right thread, and he sent me some shirty emails saying, oh, how come I'm not allowed to do this, what are you doing? I just explained to him the reason why. There's no point talking about one car in a different thread, because the conversation will get lost and other people want to read what he's got to say. And he was very apologetic, and he actually said, you must be very patient, you must have seen this sort of thing before, and you do, it's no big deal, it's just how it is, you deal with it, and it makes it a better place for everyone, really.
You're not feeling stressed by it or short of energy for it?
No, not at all. I enjoy it a lot. I spend a lot of hours every week sat in front of my computer, reading and replying, helping people, speaking to the factory. People got issues, we can go to them, or we can go to garages we know that can help out with the problems as well, to get things done nice and quickly. I'd say 60, 70 hours a week. I work in the office from 9 till 6, and then I go and sit in the lounge, put my laptop, and I'm there if I'm not in the pub. On my laptop, keeping TLF up to date and making sure that everything's read all the time and everything's in the right place and everything's going the way it should go. So yeah, it's a lot of hours. It's not hard work, but it is a constant flow of work, really.
So what's the future?
We grow in terms of traffic 30% a year pretty consistently. Now Geely have bought Lotus, they're going to be building more cars, we're going to have more people coming on the site. The nice thing about a forum is it retains all the historic stuff. We don't archive anything. First post from 13 years is still there. First person with flooded headlamp pods is still there. So that's just going to grow and grow and grow, really. And yeah, we were the first official community partner with Lotus. We work with them quite a bit. We're going to do more and more stuff with them. What we want to do is when Lotus have got new cars coming out and they've got new information, we look at it from an enthusiast and an owner's perspective rather than a journalist. We don't try and drift the cars around corners. We say how it feels for us driving the car, which is what our readers and members are like. So we want to do more reviews. We review nearly every new car that comes out, but getting into the technical side of it, the nitty gritty. If they've taken weight from behind the rear bumper with a sustaining exhaust, what difference does that make to the drive of the car? And then how does it make it feel when you are driving it, rather than just, oh yeah, it drifts really nicely. We don't do that. We don't do that when we drive, and we don't do it on track days. So we pass on how it makes us feel as the owners, rather than other people's perspective. And I think people like that, because they are our audience at the end of the day.
So you're making obviously a decent living from it, and we're not going to lose you.
Oh, steady. I wouldn't say decent. I'm not retiring young. It pays for itself, and I'm happy with that. I don't intend to get rich off the back of it. I never will, but I enjoy it. They say there's a Venn diagram with 3 things: what you like, what pays you money, and what you're good at. And generally in life you have 2, but I feel with TLF I got all 3, so I'm happy with it as it is. I met a lot of nice people through it. Travelled over the world meeting TLF people. Been to America to a car party. Been to Denmark for a nice day out in Copenhagen with our members. Met people in France. You go to events. Been to Le Mans and the Ring. You'll bump into people. It happens. And it's nice like that. It's nice to build a lot of friends. And I've got a lot of phone numbers in my phone of people that I met from TLF, and I'm very happy to call them my friends, and I speak to them quite often. I'll show you about Simon, but other than that, he's got a lovely cat.
look like that. Yeah, water off the duck's back. Cat looks happy too.
I don't really have a lot of pressure in my life, so it's nice to be in an environment where a lot of people have good expectations. It's good. It's nice to do. Do you know I started marshalling up at Brands Hatch for a few years while I had the time. I can't really do it now because of the amount of events that I go to. But it was nice to have something that I had to do, and I had to be there, and you had to do it properly, and you had to be safe and cautious, and it was an element of danger as well. I'm not being flippant about the fact that marshals have been killed in the past, but I didn't really have that sitting in front of a computer talking to people about Lotuses, so I started marshalling, and I enjoyed that a lot for that reason. But it's cold. It's really cold. Yeah, it's a bit boring otherwise, isn't it?
There is a man who is always approachable, always in good form and up for a laugh, and just a really cool and interesting cat. And I am very thankful to have been able to sit down with him, not least because Soup has a lot to thank Bibs for. And there it is, so I hope you found that interesting. And speaking of thanking people, my patrons, Brian Larkins, Josh Westwood, Marty Jurish and Richie. Guys, great to have you on board. Thank you so much for coming on board and looking forward to chatting. We did have some people come at us to try and find ones that got away too, but we don't have a lot to go on. The first was a guy named Paul. That's all he called himself. And Paul is looking for his 72 Lotus Europa. He reckons the orange paint was bus paint, and judging by the colour reproduction on the photos and the fact that there are orange or yellow buses, I'm guessing this was in the States, maybe in the 90s or Canada. Anyway, get back in touch, Paul. Give us some more info. We'll try and find the car. The other person was Rolf Dungren. Funny name. He is looking for his 84 Honda Civic, which he says he sold for a pint of beer. That's motivation. I don't know who got the better end of that deal though. Anyway, Rolf, send us some photographs, mate. I'd love to see a 1984 Honda Civic. If you want my email address, if anybody wants to get in touch to show their projects or to try and find that one that got away, click the channel name under any of the videos, Soup Classic Motoring, then click about and you will find my email in there. Okay, the plan is to get the cars back here, to finish the Range Rover, to do some serious rearranging, get Tina sorted so that she can go back to Rob for summer and he gets the enjoyment out of her. And then I want to focus wholeheartedly on getting the Esprit done, because recent events that you will soon see have meant that my mojo for getting that car done is at an all-time high. So until I see you next time, I'm going to get stuck in, you get stuck in, take care and good luck.